500 elo, the whole gambit rests on a single trade, a pawn, for time. It starts quietly, e4, e5, the pieces come out, n f3, nc6, bc4, bc5, then white shoves the b-pawn to b4 and offers it to the bishop. Black takes, c3, hitting the bishop, forcing it to move yet again. The bishop retreats, then d4, and the center detonates. The bishop on c4 already stares down f7, the weakest square in black's whole count. The knight is ready to jump. The queen eyes b3. The dark bishop is ready to swing to a. You're not counting pawns anymore. You're counting moves, and white is ahead. That's the trade. And at every level after this one, that head start is the weapon. 700 elo. The knight springs to g5 and points straight at f7, and black does the natural thing, castles, tucking the king into the corner behind its pawns, where it's supposed to be safe. It just castled straight into the fire. Now the queen slides out to h5. The queen wants h7, mate, with the knight guarding her as she lands. And if black saves the king, the f7 pawn falls instead, and the material with it. Mate on one side, material on the other. Black can't cover both. Now, here's the trap inside the trap. Most players grab f7 with the bishop. It looks like the kill. It throws the win away, because black's pawn, sitting on d4, jams the file. So the follow-up fork never lands, and the whole attack evaporates. The flashy capture fails. The quiet move wins. That's the first real lesson of this opening. The strongest move is almost never the loudest one. 900 elo. Sometimes black doesn't castle in time, so white makes sure he never gets the chance. First, the e-pawn lunges to e5, striking the knight on f6, and black answers by capturing with the d-pawn, cracking the center open. Now comes the surgical move. The dark bishop swings all the way to a. Look at the diagonal it controls: a3, b4, c5, d6, e7, and f8. The exact square the king has to pass through to castle. With the bishop covering f8, castling is now legal. The escape hatch is welded shut. The king is stranded in the center. On the same file, white is about to pry wide open. No walls, no corner, no way out. White gave away a pawn. In return, it took the one thing the king wanted most. 1100 elo. Now the gambit pays out. White is down material, has been for moves. It doesn't matter. The king is frozen on e8. The bishop on a3 still strangling the dark squares. The knight already perched on g5. Watch the box close. The rook crashes into e6. Check, protected by the knight. The only block is a knight thrown in front on e7. So the rook takes that too. Check again. And this time the bishop on a3 guards it from behind. The king runs to f8. The knight leaps to e6. Check. And now count the king's squares. e8 is sealed by the rook. f7 is sealed by the rook. The king has exactly one move left. And it's the wrong one. g8. The rook slides over and takes g7. Mate. The knight guards the rook. The knight covers f8. And the final square, h8, is blocked by black's own rook, the piece that was supposed to defend it. Down material the entire time, mating anyway. That is the promise of the Evans Gambit, made literal on the board. 1300 elo. Here's the twist nobody expects. The gambit can be turned against the player using it. This whole opening punishes greed, grabbing material while your pieces sleep at home. And white can fall into that exact trap, snatch a pawn too early, leave the king in the center, and black plays the same way white was supposed to. Watch greed get punished. White's knight grabs a pawn on e5, undeveloped, uncastled. Black's queen swings to g5, hitting that knight and the g2 pawn at once. White lunges for a fork on f7, and black simply ignores it. The queen takes g2, hunting the rook in the corner. White defends. The queen takes e4, with check. White blocks with the bishop on e2, and that block is the move that ends the game, because the bishop is now pinned, frozen against its own king by the queen on e4. The knight drops into f3. Check. The king is buried under its own pieces, and the one defender that could capture the knight cannot move a muscle. Checkmate, with almost nothing left on the board. One careless capture, one pinned bishop, one knight. The lesson cuts both ways. In this opening, whoever stops to count pawns is the one who gets mated. 1400 elo. Now we switch sides, because defending the Evans is harder than attacking it. And it comes down to single squares. Put black's queen on the wrong one, f6, and watch the position fall apart. White pushes d5, hitting the knight. The knight retreats. Then the queen swings to a4 with check, raking the diagonal toward the king. And from a4, that same queen also hits black's loose bishop on a5. One step up the file, undefended. Check first, then the piece falls. Now rewind. Put the queen one square over. On d7 instead of f6. Everything changes. From d7 the queen defends f7. And it plugs the a4 diagonal before white can ever use it. The knight can retreat in peace. The check never comes. Same position, same threats, neutralized by a single square. And the pattern repeats across the whole defense. When the e-pawn lunges to e5 and attacks the f6 knight, black doesn't retreat. Black hits back with d5 against the bishop, entangling in one move. When a rook pins a knight to the king down the e-file, black castles out of the pin. Then drops a pawn to d5 that forks the bishop and the rook and wins the piece straight back. The attack is about violence, the defense is about precision. One square decides which one you are. 1600 LO, 1963. A young Bobby Fischer sits down for a casual game and reaches for the opening everyone said was dead. What follows is a machine. The knight jumps to d5, attacking the queen, threatening a fork on c7 at the same time. Black trades it off. White recaptures with the pawn. And watch what that does. The e-file tears open, and the bishop on c4 still burns down toward f7. Black tries to plant a knight on e5. White takes it instantly. The queen recaptures, and now it's sitting in the open, exposed. The dark bishop swings to b2. One move, and it develops, hits the queen, and aims straight down the long diagonal at g7, right beside the king. Every white piece is now in the attack. Every black piece is still scrambling to get at. Fischer thought this gambit was busted. Then he used it to dismantle a strong master in a handful of moves, fully developed, fully coordinated. While the enemy king never found a home. The theory called it dead. It won anyway. 1950 LO. This is where the moves stop looking like chess. Black opens with fire. The rook throws itself onto h2, smashing into the pawns in front of the white king. Check. The king takes. It has 2. And now it's been dragged out of its shell. And here, in the middle of a mating attack, with pieces hanging everywhere, black plays the strangest move imaginable. The king takes a quiet step sideways to d7. No check, no capture, no threat you can see. It looks like a wasted move, a blunder. It's the only move that wins, because by stepping off the back rank, the king clears the e8 square, and opens a highway for the queen to travel all the way to the far corner. The queen swings to h8. Check, racing down toward the exposed king. The king flees to g2, and the queen drops to h3. Checkmate. Look at why it holds. The queen on h3 is protected by the bishop waiting on g4. The king can't run, because the second bishop, all the way back on b6, has been quietly covering f2 and g1 the entire time. Every escape square was sealed before the king was ever in danger. A rook sacrificed to open the door. A silent king moved to build the road. A mate delivered from the far edge of the board. 2000 LO, the most famous Evans Gambit ever played. 1852. They named it the Evergreen Game, because a finish like this never dies. White is about to give away the queen for the second time in this video, and this one is immortal. The queen captures on d7. Check, it sits right next to the king, begging to be taken. And the king takes it, the strongest piece on the board, gone. Now the light bishop slides to f5, and this is the move that wins. A double check. The bishop checks from f5, and at the very same instant, the rook it just unmasked checks down the open d-file. To pieces, to lines of fire, at once. Against a double check there is only one reply in all of chess. The king must move. It cannot block both. It cannot capture both. The king staggers to e8. The same light bishop swings to d7. Check, hurting it. The king is forced to f8. And now the killing blow comes from the other side of the board. The dark bishop, the one that's been sitting on a3 since the opening, doing nothing but watching the dark diagonal, captures on e7. Checkmate. Count the net. The light bishop on d7 seals e8. A lone pawn on f6 covers g7. And the dark bishop, the patient one, delivers the mate. A queen sacrifice, a double check, a handful of minor pieces. The most celebrated checkmate in the history of the game. And every piece in it was placed by the logic of this one opening. 2000 and beyond. The masterpiece. Amsterdam, 1995. The strongest player alive picks up the 200-year-old gambit and points it at a grandmother, and the grandmother refuses to take the pawn. It doesn't matter. Watch what happens to a player who declines the fight. Kasparov grabs space on the queen side, a4, then b5. Chasing the pieces backward, he trades off the knight that wanders into the center. He builds the classic Evans center, c3, then d4, and then, instead of grabbing his material back, he does the thing this opening always does. He castles, gets the king safe, and keeps developing while his opponent is still untangling. The bishop comes to g5, fan pins a knight. He trades it off rather than waste a move retreating. He takes over the center, he brings his last piece to its best square. And then comes the move that defines the game. The knight leaps to d5, and offers itself in the middle of the board. Black's bishop crashes through and takes the rook in the corner. Kasparov lets it go. A whole rook for a minor piece, an exchange sacrificed without hesitation, because, when his queen recaptures, it lands on the long diagonal, and from there it stares the entire length of the board at Black's king. Now the squeeze begins, and it never lets up. The e-pawn jumps to e5, and suddenly, the enemy queen is running out of safe squares. A rook swings to the c-file and lines up on her. Then the quiet killer, the bishop slips back to a2, uncovering a discovered attack down the c-file, forcing the queen to a miserable square, while still guarding its knight and still aiming at the king. The queen is shoved to the rim, and the knight delivers the verdict. It jumps to b6, hitting the rook in the corner and threatening the bishop check on f7. At the same time, the diagonal to the king blown open. Black blocks one threat. The knight takes the other, capturing the rook, emerging with a winning material advantage. A pawn, offered on move 4. A rook, offered in the middle game. Both came back with interest. This is the gambit at the highest level there is. Not violence for its own sake, but a slow, exact, inevitable tightening. Space, then the center, then the diagonal, then the king. A 200-year-old idea, declared dead by the textbooks, played with such precision that a grandmother who refused to even touch the pawn was dismantled anyway. That's the whole secret. You don't win the Evans Gambit by taking. You win it by giving, and making every square you give away cost more than the one you took.